All right, let's dive into one of the most famous and maybe most misunderstood books in history, the Book of Revelation. We all have this image of what it is, right? But what if I told you there's a theory that suggests for the past 2,000 years, we might have been reading it completely wrong?
I mean, when you hear the apocalypse, your mind probably jumps straight to prophecies about the end of the world, right? Some big cosmic battle that's still way off in our future. But what if it's not about the future at all?
And this is where we hit the central puzzle. The popular view is all about a future cataclysm. But the text itself says, right up front, that it's about things that must soon take place. So that leaves us with a pretty big question mark. Why is there a 2,000-year gap between when it was written and, well, today?
I mean, look at this. It's literally the first line of the book. What must soon take place. That word soon is the whole problem. If soon really meant soon for the people reading it back then, a prophecy about the 21st century or beyond just doesn't seem to fit, does it? The theory we're digging into today offers a pretty radical solution to this timing issue.
So here's the big idea. What if we've been looking in the completely wrong direction? What if Revelation isn't a roadmap to the future, but an allegory, a symbolic story about events that had already happened, specifically the events of the Easter story?
So what exactly do we mean by allegory? Think of it like a story that's working on two levels at once. You have the surface story, all the wild, mystical visions of angels, beasts, and strange happenings. But underneath all that, it's pointing to a deeper, real-world truth. In this view, the apocalyptic visions are kind of the illusion, and the hidden reality is the actual historical Easter story.
Okay, but why? Why would anyone write such a complicated, symbolic story? Well, to get that, we have to look at the historical context. This theory argues that the author was fighting back against a very specific threat, a heresy called Docetism. And these guys, the Docetists, were basically saying that Jesus wasn't a real human being, that he was a purely spiritual being, a phantom, who never actually came in the flesh and never really suffered. Which leads us to the next obvious question, right? If your goal is to prove that Jesus was a real physical person who really suffered, why not just say that? Why create this incredibly elaborate coded message that people would still be trying to figure out 2 millennia later?
So let's walk through the logic here. First, you have the threat, Docetism, which denies Jesus' physical reality. The response comes from the Apostle John, who writes this powerful but coded defense. His method? He uses this grand allegory, the Book of Revelation, where all those crazy visions are actually symbols for real historical events. And the key, the thing you need to unlock the whole code, is the eyewitness testimony of the Easter story itself.
Okay, so theory is one thing, but let's see how this actually works in practice. We're going to use Revelation chapter 14 as a kind of case study. According to this theory, this entire chapter is a detailed, symbolic retelling of Jesus' trial before the Sanhedrin, the Jewish high court. Just look at how these parallels line up. On the left, you have the illusion, the apocalyptic language from Revelation 14. And on the right, you have the proposed reality, the specific moment from the Easter story that it's supposed to represent. You can see there's this incredible one-to-one mapping for everything, the location, the sounds, the key figures, all the way to the climax and aftermath.
Let's break this down. Revelation 14 kicks off with the vision of a lamb on Mount Zion. So, where was the historical reality of Jesus' trial? It happened at the house of the high priest Caiaphas, which historical sources place, you guessed it, right on Mount Zion. So the location is a perfect match. The lamb, of course, is Jesus, and the 144,000 are interpreted as representing the assembly of the Sanhedrin.
And this next part is where things get really clever. The vision in Revelation talks about 3 angels, 3 winged creatures that fly by making these big proclamations. Now think about the Easter story. What major event happens in threes? Peter's 3 denials of Jesus. And what famously marks those denials? The crowing of a rooster, another winged creature. You see the symbolic swap?
Let's unpack that even further. The first angel talks about the hour of his judgment, which maps perfectly to the rooster's crow, marking the exact time of Jesus' trial. The second angel shouts, "Babylon is fallen." Babylon, or Babel, is famously associated with the confusion of languages. This maps to Peter's confused denial, "I do not know what you are saying." And the third angel? it unleashes terrible curses, which maps directly to the Gospel account where Peter starts to curse and swear during his final, most emphatic denial. The parallels are just incredibly specific.
So what was the turning point of the actual trial? It was this moment. The high priest basically demands to know if Jesus is the Messiah, and this is Jesus' answer. This statement is the reason they condemn him for blasphemy. Now hold that phrase in your head and watch how this exact language shows up in Revelation's allegory.
And here is the linguistic smoking gun. The very next vision in Revelation describes someone like the Son of Man who is seated on the clouds. According to this theory, that is not a coincidence. These three key words, Son of Man, seated, and clouds, are like a direct fingerprint, creating an unmistakable link back to Jesus' history-changing statement at his own trial.
Okay, so we've been looking at the tiny details, the micro-level stuff in just one chapter. But now we're going to zoom out and look at what this theory claims is the real smoking gun, a huge structural parallel that runs through the very core of the entire book. Just look at this progression. The theory argues that the major chapters in the back half of Revelation follow the exact chronological sequence of the Easter narrative. Chapter 16 represents the Passion, the sufferings of Christ. Chapter 17 is his death. Chapter 18 is his burial. And chapter 20 is his resurrection. For all of this to line up in perfect order, well, that's presented as the ultimate proof that this was all intentional.
So if you accept this framework, the entire meaning of the book of Revelation just completely transforms. It stops being this spooky, mysterious blueprint for a future apocalypse, and instead it becomes this incredibly powerful, creative, and symbolic piece of historical testimony written for a very specific reason at a very specific time in history.
So let's just quickly recap the main points here. This theory suggests Revelation is a masterfully crafted allegory designed to fight the Docetist heresy. It does this by powerfully affirming Jesus' physical suffering and his real humanity. The Easter story isn't just some background detail, it's the actual key that unlocks the whole thing. And, maybe most importantly, it finally solves that 2,000-year timing problem by locking the phrase, "what must soon take place," firmly to the historical events around AD 30.
And that really leaves us with a much bigger thought to chew on. This has all been about one theory for one ancient book. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other ancient texts, religious or not, might look completely different to us if we could just rediscover the original historical conversations they were actually a part of? It's a pretty powerful reminder of just how much meaning can be hiding right beneath the surface.